I wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary when I walked into the coffee shop that Thursday afternoon. It was one of those quiet days, cloudy, a little cold, the kind of day where memories sneak up on you. I had just ordered my usual, found a corner seat by the window, and pulled out my phone to scroll through emails. That's when I saw her. 20 years disappeared in a heartbeat. She stood at the entrance like a ghost from my past, and for a second, it felt like time froze. Her hair was shorter now, streaked with a little gray, but her presence hadn't changed. I knew it was her the moment I looked up. My heart actually skipped. I hadn't seen Emily since the day we broke things off 2 decades ago. It wasn't a messy breakup, no shouting, no betrayal. It was just 2 young people going in different directions, thinking they had all the time in the world to find their way back, but never did. She glanced around the room slowly, and our eyes met, or at least, I thought they did. But there was nothing in her expression. Not recognition, not surprise. Nothing. She looked right through me, like I was just another face in the crowd. For a moment, I wondered if I was wrong. Maybe it wasn't her. Maybe I was projecting the past onto a stranger. But then she smiled at the barista and said, "Hi, I'm Emily. Just a small chai latte." And that was all the confirmation I needed. I sat there frozen, watching her as if I was watching a movie of someone else's life. So many memories came rushing back, the late-night drives, the college library where we'd whisper about the future, the promise we made to always stay in touch, even if life pulled us apart. But we hadn't. We never did. After we graduated, she moved to another city, and I stayed back to take care of my dad after his health started failing. We had one final phone call that fizzled into silence. Since then, not a word. And now here she was. In the same coffee shop as me. After 20 years. I debated what to do. Do I walk up to her? Say her name? Ask if she remembers me? What if she genuinely doesn't? Or worse, what if she does, and wishes she didn't? I couldn't figure out which scenario hurt more. Then something even stranger happened. As she waited for her drink, she turned around, slowly scanned the room again, and paused. For a second, it looked like she might walk over. But she didn't. She reached into her bag, pulled out her phone, and called someone. I could hear bits of her conversation as she passed by my table. Something about being early and waiting outside. No hint of surprise. No flicker of the past in her voice. She left like I wasn't even there. I sat there for a long time after she walked out. My drink had gone cold. The same way a part of me felt, frozen in a moment I couldn't make sense of. What if the person you spent years missing walked back into your life? And didn't even see you? What if the love you never truly let go of had long since moved on, forgotten your face, your name, your voice? But as I replayed that moment over and over in my head, something didn't sit right. The way she paused. The way her eyes seemed to flicker, just for a second, when they met mine. What if she did recognize me, and was pretending not to? That's when I knew I had to find out. The next few days felt like I was living in a weird dream. I couldn't get Emily out of my mind. I kept asking myself the same questions, over and over. Was it really her? Did she truly not recognize me? Or was there something else going on that I didn't understand? It's not every day your ex shows up after 20 years, in your city, in your neighborhood, and in the same cafe you've been going to for years. I started replaying old memories, trying to make sense of what had happened between us. Back in college, Emily and I were inseparable. We weren't just a couple, we were best friends. We used to talk about everything, our dreams, our fears, even the kind of people we thought we'd become someday. She was the kind of person who lit up every room, but with me, she was quieter, more thoughtful. I saw a side of her I don't think many others did. But life, as it always does, got complicated. I had family responsibilities I couldn't ignore. She had job offers and ambitions that took her far away. We promised to stay in touch, but our calls got shorter and less frequent until one day they just stopped. I never blamed her. I thought she had just moved on, and I tried to do the same. But clearly, a part of me hadn't. After seeing her that day, I found myself walking past the coffee shop more often, half hoping she'd show up again. And then, a week later, she did. Same time of day. Same drink. But this time, she wasn't alone. A man was with her. He looked about our age, maybe a little older. Sharp suit, confident posture. He placed a hand gently on the small of her back when they walked in, the kind of gesture that says, "We're close." I watched from a distance, careful not to be seen. I wasn't sure why I didn't just leave. Maybe I wanted to convince myself she was happy. Maybe I wanted to see if there was any sign she remembered me. But there wasn't. They sat down, talked quietly, and she laughed, that same laugh I used to know so well. It should have made me smile. Instead, it felt like someone had hit rewind on my life and then ripped the tape halfway through. Still, something felt off. Every time she looked around the room, it wasn't casual. It was quick, almost nervous. Her eyes scanned the space like she was searching for something, or someone. And a couple of times, I swear she glanced in my direction, just for a second too long. I started to wonder, was she hiding something? Or was I just reading too much into everything? Later that night, I pulled out an old photo album I hadn't touched in years. There we were, at a college carnival, faces painted, fingers laced together. Another one from a road trip to the coast, her head resting on my shoulder, both of us sunburned and laughing. She hadn't just been a chapter in my life. She had been the whole first half of the book. That's when I knew I couldn't just sit back and watch from the sidelines. There were too many unanswered questions. Too many strange details that didn't make sense. And if there was even the smallest chance that she remembered me, that she was pretending not to, I had to know why. So I made a decision. Next time I saw her, I was going to say something. What I didn't know then was just how much that conversation would change everything. The next time I saw her, I didn't hesitate. She was alone again, standing in line at the cafe, scrolling through her phone like nothing had changed. My heart pounded as I walked up beside her. "Emily?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She turned, and for a second, just a split second, her expression flickered. Something was there. Recognition, maybe even shock. But it was gone so fast I couldn't be sure. She blinked and gave a polite smile. "Sorry, do I know you?" That hit harder than I expected. I almost laughed, thinking maybe this was her way of pretending. A defense. But something about the way she looked at me, calm, composed, almost too perfect, made me pause. I introduced myself, said my name. Told her we went to college together. Still nothing. No spark of memory. She nodded slowly, like she was processing what I said, then gently apologized and said she didn't remember me. She even added that maybe I had her confused with someone else. Then she turned back to the counter, ordered her drink, and walked outside like it was just any normal day. I stood there frozen, caught somewhere between disbelief and something worse as doubt. Was I wrong this whole time? Could she really have no memory of me? Or was she lying, and if so, why? The next day, I decided to dig. Not in a creepy way, just enough to get some clarity. I asked an old mutual friend from college if they'd heard from Emily recently. Turns out, she had completely disappeared after graduation. No social media, no reunions, no emails. It was like she had wiped the slate clean. That only deepened the mystery. Why would someone cut ties with everyone from their past? That's when something strange happened. I got an anonymous message on Facebook. No name. No profile picture. Just one line, "Stop asking about Emily." At first, I thought it was a prank. But then, as I was walking to my car later that night, I noticed a black sedan parked across the street, engine running, lights off. It pulled away as soon as I stepped outside. I hadn't told anyone else what I was doing. So how did someone know? And more importantly, what exactly was I getting myself into? The woman I once loved, the girl I thought I knew better than anyone, was suddenly the center of something that didn't feel right. And the more I tried to find the truth, the more it felt like I was being warned to stop. But I wasn't going to stop. Not yet. After that message, things started happening fast. I began noticing subtle changes, small, quiet signs that I was being watched. My apartment door was left slightly open one night, even though I remembered locking it. A voicemail came in from an unknown number, completely silent except for the faint sound of wind and what sounded like footsteps. It felt ridiculous to be paranoid, but this was no longer just about an ex-girlfriend. Something deeper was going on. I stopped going to the coffee shop, figuring if someone was keeping tabs on me, that was the most obvious place to look. Instead, I started checking public records, reaching out to more old contacts. Most had no idea where Emily had gone after college, but one friend remembered she'd gotten involved in some kind of private research foundation in New York years ago. Nothing shady, just secretive. They couldn't recall the name, but said Emily had told them it was important work and then never brought it up again. Late one night, I sat in front of my computer, staring at a paused video clip I found buried in an old university archive, a seminar Emily had spoken at during our final year. She looked so full of life, so certain of who she was. I barely recognized the cold, distant version I'd met in the coffee shop. And I started to wonder, what happened to her in those missing years? Then, I saw her again. Not by accident. I followed her after she left a building downtown. She walked fast, head down, constantly checking over her shoulder. She wasn't just hiding from me, she was hiding from someone. I stayed back, watching as she slipped into a quiet alley and disappeared through a back door. I crept closer, heart hammering. Just before the door closed, I caught a glimpse of her face, and this time, there was no mask. She knew I was there. For a split second, she hesitated. And then, without a word, she vanished behind the door. That's when I knew, the truth was closer than ever. And whatever it was something she didn't want me to find. I waited outside that door for what felt like forever, trying to decide if I should go in. Every instinct told me to walk away, to let it go, but I couldn't. Something about the look in Emily's eyes before she disappeared, it wasn't fear. It was a warning. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The hallway was narrow, dimly lit, and completely silent. I followed the sound of faint voices coming from behind a partially closed door. Just as I reached it, the voices stopped. I pushed the door open slowly, and froze. The room was empty, except for a corkboard covered in papers and photographs. And in the center of it all, was a picture of me. Not from college. A recent one. Taken without me knowing. My face was circled in red ink, and beside it were notes I couldn't fully read. My name. My old address. Dates. Times. All scrawled in rushed handwriting. And next to my photo, Emily's. But under her name, someone had written subject 14. Before I could process what I was looking at, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around, but the hallway was already empty. I grabbed one of the papers off the board and stuffed it into my pocket before bolting out the back exit. My hands were shaking. This wasn't just about a forgotten relationship anymore. I was part of something I didn't understand. Back in my apartment, I looked closer at the paper. It mentioned a program, something called Echo Cycle, along with a set of numbers and the word reintegration. I had no idea what any of it meant, but I knew one thing for sure, Emily hadn't just disappeared from my life. She had been pulled into something far bigger. And now, whatever that was, it had pulled me in, too. The next morning, I decided to confront her. I returned to the alley, hoping she'd be there again. And she was, this time, waiting. She didn't run, didn't pretend. She looked tired, like someone who had carried a secret for too long. You weren't supposed to find me, she said quietly. I asked her what echo cycle was, what they'd done to her, and to me. She hesitated, then finally told me everything. After college, she'd been recruited into a classified program testing memory suppression and reintegration, a way to erase people's pasts, start fresh, build new identities. She'd volunteered, thinking it was a way to escape the pain of her own losses. What she didn't know was that I had unknowingly been part of the trial. A control subject. Someone she once loved, then was ordered to forget. She had fought against the process, even tried to leave, but the memories were buried too deep. And when I found her again, those emotions began to resurface. That's why she was avoiding me. She wasn't protecting herself, she was trying to protect me. I asked her why they were still watching me. She looked me dead in the eye and said, because they failed. The program didn't work on you. You remembered. Before I could respond, a loud bang echoed down the alley, a car door slamming. She grabbed my arm. You have to go. Now. I ran, heart pounding, her words ringing in my ears. Later that night, I found another envelope taped to my door. Inside was a photo. Of her. But this time, she was standing beside someone who looked exactly like me. I stared at the photo for a long time, my hands trembling. The man beside Emily wasn't just someone who looked like me, he was me. Or at least, a version of me. Same face, same build, even the same scar above the eyebrow I got during our sophomore year. It didn't make sense. Unless, the program hadn't just erased memories. It had duplicated lives. I spent the next few days piecing together what I could. The Echo Cycle project had gone deeper than anyone knew, not just memory suppression, but full behavioral cloning. Creating alternate versions of people, testing them in parallel lives, seeing who adapted and who broke. I had been part of a test I never agreed to. And somehow, I had woken up from it while others kept living a reality that wasn't entirely theirs. Emily had tried to shut the door on her past, but fate, or something bigger, dragged us both back to it. That version of me in the photo? Maybe he was still living the life I was meant to. Or maybe he didn't even know I existed. I never saw Emily again after that night. She vanished, leaving no trace, like a ghost. But in a strange way, I finally understood. What we had was real, once. And whatever was done to us couldn't erase that truth. Now, I live with the weight of what I know. Not angry. Not afraid. Just aware. That sometimes, the past doesn't stay buried. And sometimes, the person staring back at you in the mirror might not be the only version of you that ever existed. 4.